And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are previewing, yep, you guessed it, the Miami Grand Prix, set to take place this coming weekend. Fingers crossed. Let's get right into it. So let's have a look at what time the Miami Grand Prix is. Obviously here in the UK, I don't have every time, unfortunately. I wish I did. Maybe I will have further down the road. So Friday the 3rd of May, and significantly, it is a sprint race. Practice 1 shootout starts at 5 on air from Sky, but 5:30 is the actual practice 1. Sprint shootout 9:30 in the evening, with the sprint race starting at 5 on Saturday the 4th of May, with qualifying at 9 o'clock in the evening. Finally, the Grand Prix at 9 o'clock in the evening on the 5th of May. But what's good for people in the UK, I believe it's Bank Holiday Monday on the 6th, so potentially we'll get a line. It doesn't matter what time the race finishes. Bearing in mind they have so many hours. I imagine, though, it's probably going to be dry for Miami. It normally is. It's normally quite lovely weather, let's say. Very lovely. So let's get into our Miami Grand Prix preview for real. We're going to be looking at the drivers. We're going to be looking at some of the track facts. But first, let's look at the track itself, shall we? I am just looking down to play our track preview. Here we go. So, as you can see, we are at the We are at Miami racing in Lewis Hamilton's car of last year. Yeah, not very successful, but this is the last corner. So it's really, really sharp, and you do have overtaking at the last corner, but you want to put that power on really soon. You just saw the DRS line there, so you've got that kind of like really longish chicane. It's not really a chicane, it's like a shallowy S coming in to that first corner, which is a braking zone, which is a corner that you can pass on. It is a street track, as you've probably seen, round these really, really fast S's again, and this is not quite Saudi Arabia levels of fast, but it is quite fast. Once again, sweep round the left and right hand turns, and then I believe it is almost a short braking zone, and we have a ding dong all the way now where we put the power down. You've just seen the DRS line there, and this is once again another passing zone. So there are places to pass on this street circuit. It's not like it's going to be Singapore, and we get up to, as you can see, a fair lick of speed, maxing out all that, and then quite hard on the brakes, easy to go wide. As you can see, I probably did. Although, to be fair, let's just rewind it a tiny bit. Here, as you can see, I've left the racing line, and there's 2 racing lines. There's very much 2 lines going into and coming out this corner where you can, put the power on a bit early, straighten up. But here's, after this straight, it's very Mickey Mouse. It's really, really twisty. The car is really struggling for grip. And here is the chicane of doom, at least when you play online. So brake nice and early. What you want to do is brake early for that if you're doing it, and then be really careful through here, because yes, you spend a lot of time in that chicane, which also means you can lose a lot of time in that chicane. Get that car nice and straight for what is one of the more important corners of the track, a really slow one, and then 4 bananas straight down the final big straight until we get to that, essentially the last proper corner. Anyway, the last braking zone down in Miami, and then slam on the brakes. Once again, it will be pretty much almost maximum speed. I mean, we've even seen almost 2-3 abreast there, well, not quite, but nearly before. And then back into another lap of Miami, ding dong all the way. So let's have a look at some of the Miami stats, shall we? So we've got, it's a track length of 5.412 kilometres, 57 laps, and 16 turns. But there's a bit more to it. There's a bit more to Miami than that. So the track joined the calendar, much been owned under a lot of hype. Not so much hype for the 2023, and quite a few of the people, let's just say, are not massive fans of the track. Now, even the locals, some of them, I've been listening to some of the radio shows, some of them have indeed been interviewed in relation to how they feel about the track and how they feel about the event. And most, it's okay. It's not like the inconvenience that Las Vegas was. However, many have said the buzz since 2022 has gone down quite significantly. I mean, some are having like parties in their bars, etc., where it was pretty much a sellout. Especially the first year, mostly the second year, definitely not so much this year. I mean, it may well be by the time we get to the Grand Prix, but as we said, other than Australia, it looks like another Max Verstappen show, to be fair. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's hardly worth predicting the podium. So it opened in 2022. Max Verstappen holds the track record of a 126.814, and also, sadly, the lap record for some, not Red Bull fans, obviously, on a 129.708. So he's taken victory in both Miami races. And this was the one race where I think we saw Perez kind of suffer a tiny bit. It was after Baku where Perez had won and where Max Verstappen had almost sworn to the gods that he was never, ever going to lose against Perez again, and he pretty much didn't unless he had a massive problem, as in Australia, for example, this year. So Red Bull, funny enough, then have the most wins at the track. Ergo Max Verstappen. Ergo he's won twice. Ergo Netherlands is the most dominant country at the track. So the two races so far, Miami, they've been won though by relatively small margins. The smallest margin to date was 3.786 seconds in 2022, and that was when Leclerc, I believe, was fighting Verstappen, and it got quite close. It was shortly after a safety car. Now, all five of the previous Miami Grand Prix podium finishers, they're currently obviously on the 2024 grid. We've got Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, and Fernando Alonso. Red Bull are obviously the team with the most podiums. Surprise, surprise. Spain and the Netherlands are tied for the most podiums because we've both had Alonso and Sainz on there. And in relation to the pole sitters, well, I think what was it? There's yet to be a repeat Miami pole sitter. Each race has had different people on pole, Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez respectively. Funnily enough, not Max Verstappen, which I think is somewhat refreshing. Let's be honest. That's not too bad at all. So, what milestones can be broken though in the Miami Grand Prix? Well, go to lightsoutblog.com if you want to know more. But just a few here. Verstappen, he looks set to set potentially the longest pole streak in almost a decade. Norris also, he's equaling Hamilton's total McLaren starts. And will a driver finally convert pole to win in Miami? It hasn't happened yet. As I said, Leclerc and Perez, neither who won their respective pole positions. Also, in terms of what number race, it's the 1,107th Formula One race in history and the 77th time that Formula One has raced in the United States. Also, it's a sprint race, and I thought, a lot of people thought, including myself, I thought the sprint race did fairly okay. I thought it was good. I thought it was solid. I liked I really liked what I saw in China. Massive thumbs up there. So let's get into our drivers then, shall we? And let's see. Let's start with Mr. Magnussen. Now, here's an interesting one. Nico Hülkenberg has been confirmed for Audi / Sauber Audi for 2025, which kind of means it makes it interesting. Does that mean that Kevin Magnussen now is no under much pressure simply because that Haas may want to keep him, or are Haas going to go for a complete reset? If I was Kevin at this point, I would. I mean, the team are going to be behind me potentially more than Nico Hülkenberg. I know they say they don't, but surely it's psychological, knowing that a driver's going. Are they going to be pushing as much? You start to wonder, don't you? So I think the pressure is still on K-Mag, and I think he needs to beat Hulk and show that maybe Audi made the wrong decision, albeit there was no talks about him going to Audi, but kind of do what Carlos Sainz has done at Ferrari. And here's the man here. I mean, is he going to relax now, Nico Hülkenberg? I don't think he will, but he has been Haas's MVP out of the two, most valued player. He has done really solid qualifying. So I think Hülkenberg could potentially, if Ferrari are looking good, quite often Haas are looking good. And if Ferrari are looking good after practice and they can get the setup, bearing in mind it is a sprint weekend, so it's really tough to get that setup, I think Haas could do fairly well. Now on to the Stake F1 team. This is going to be a really interesting weekend for both Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. Simply because there's Zhou. Audi clearly don't want both drivers. They've made that known by signing Nico Hülkenberg. So is it one of them has to go, or will both of them go? This is now about survival, I think, because I think if either of these, if Audi does not want one of these two, maybe Bottas could go to the Haas team if he shows he's good and beats Zhao Guanyu. Bottas 2022 was a lot better than Bottas 2023. 2024 Bottas, well, we're not too sure. Simply because that car has been plagued with really, really bad, absolutely shocking pit stops, etc. And I can't help but feel that Bottas would have potentially scored maybe some points had that car not been too great. So I think coming in to this race weekend, both these drivers collectively are some of the two of the drivers that are most under pressure. We may well see another one, but I think both of these drivers are the most under pressure. And talking about pressure, this guy here, so Lance Stroll completely ruined his race, didn't he? But he was doing a solid job. He was better than Tsunoda in China. Yes, both RBs ended up retiring. Tsunoda just couldn't get with it. Now, is that because of the lack of setup time, which showed Danny Ricciardo's experience? Well, we may see that again, because once again, Miami is a sprint race. So the pressure is still on for Ricciardo, but I think it's a tiny bit off. Then he doesn't have as much pressure as he went into China, because he showed that this man here was beatable. He beat Yuki Tsunoda. Now, what Yuki Tsunoda needs to do is show, yes, this is just an off weekend. I guess only time will tell. We're going to see. But this man here, I think, once again, this man under massive pressure every weekend. There were talks about him after Miami being removed and Kimi Antonelli coming in his place for Imola. I don't think that's going to happen, personally. But hey, the way the silly season is going, nothing is going to be shocking me. Nothing at all is going to be surprising me at all. But I think Logan Sargent is one of the people under the most pressure. He needs to, I think, a lot of the people in Formula 1 think he's gone already. He's definitely not being signed for next year. You kind of saw that after the Australian Grand Prix, and even after the Australian Grand Prix, even us right here, we're kind of hoping that Logan Sargent was going to have a fire lit underneath his proverbial bottom and absolutely go gangbusters. That hasn't happened. So I think, unless he starts out qualifying Albon and making Albon look a bit silly, his career is not, is going to be cut short at some point. Maybe the end of this year, possibly before. I guess we'll have to see. But what you can't say is, from the outside looking in, Williams have definitely given him the best chance possible. And here we go, Alex Albon. Now, a lot of people have kind of shied on Alex Albon. I don't know whether it was the Australian Grand Prix crash and controversy, but a lot of people, where Alex Albon was one of the people suggested or mooted for a possible going to Mercedes or going to Red Bull, that has kind of, gone down a bit. And we're not hearing all those whispers anymore. So, as I take a sip, Williams, I don't think they've not scored any points, have they? They need to score points. Absolutely, they do. And it's not a good look at all. Williams need to score points, I think, this weekend, and they could do it. It's a sprint race. It's kind of randomised a bit, because you really need to get that solid setup. So Williams, I think, as a team, are under pressure. Are people going to be? I mean, their boss, James Vowles, to be fair, has come out and said, this is a building year. But I can't help but feel that Williams need to do something big, as opposed to obviously Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Yeah, anything other than getting off that back row is a bonus, isn't it? I think if one of them once again can get in Q2 in this race, fair play to both of them. But it really is, for both Pierre Gasly and Ocon, it really is damage limitation. Absolutely, for the Alpine team. And both of these drivers surely want out of the Alpine team. But the other issue is, where are they going to go? I don't know. But where are they going to go? Who wants them? Once again, Esteban Ocon has been mooted for possibly, could be going to Mercedes, but that is a could with a massive question mark next to it. Could Gasly go to a Haas? Could Gasly go to Audi? I think a lot of what happens and who goes to Audi is what Carlos Sainz does, unless obviously one of these two absolutely starts to impress. I keep coughing, sorry. Excuse me. So next up, we have the man, I think, one of the men under the most pressure, like the Kickstarter people, Lance Stroll. Yet what an absolute amateur he looked going into Daniel Ricciardo. The big problem that everybody had, and I had too, was the fact that he did not acknowledge that he made a mistake. And then the frustrating thing about it is the team did not acknowledge that Lance Stroll made a mistake, which is absolutely ridiculous, because it was his fault. He wasn't even looking at Daniel Ricciardo. Lance Stroll made a mistake, but it's almost the case of when you see other people's children, and then you hear about teachers or the other people's children being told off, for example, at parents' evening, and the parents going, "No, my child is perfect. He can do no wrong." But the whole team seem to be doing that with Lance Stroll. I know that's probably not the case behind closed doors, but in terms of out there speaking to the press, speaking to the TV, therefore speaking to us, the F1 fans, Lance Stroll can do no wrong. But we know he can. We know he's very wrong. And it's almost the polar opposite to his teammate, who's doing an absolutely solid job. Signed now for Aston Martin on a multi-year deal. Fernando Alonso has said it's a really, really big deal. The longest deal he's ever signed. Okay, Fernando Hyperbole Alonso. But still, this man is Aston Martin's MVP. And if they're going to continue to sign Lance Stroll next year, he's going to continue to be Aston Martin's most valued player. And the other side of the garage, I don't want to say he's a joke. That's a bit harsh, because you've got to be, to keep that car on the track, you've got to have a certain amount of talent. But in terms of other people that could be taking the Aston Martin seat, yeah, there's a lot more talent there than Lance Stroll, most certainly. So, McLaren. Now, Oscar Piastri. So, Lando Norris is doing really, really well. We're all talking about Lando, who's currently got a disfigured face. He had a slight accident, and I've seen, I think on planetf1.com. I might show you at the end. There is what is it? There's a picture of Lando with a slight disfigured face. I'll get into that when we talk about Lando Norris. But the issue here is that Oscar Piastri, for me, has disappointed so far this season. I really thought he was going to be so close to Lando Norris, but he's not. And I don't know why. We had Japan where he outshone Norris, I think, in qualifying last year. That didn't happen. Okay, China, neither of them raced, but they have raced here. Oscar Piastri's raced here before. Okay, China was maybe an outlier. He did very average in China, didn't he? Before, obviously, he got damaged via Ricciardo, via Lance Stroll. But I can't help but thinking we want more from Oscar Piastri. This is not your rookie year anymore, where you kind of get a few buys, so to speak. But yeah, disappointed. I think the pressure is on for him to have a solid weekend. I don't think anyone expects him to beat Lando, but at least finish behind him and be quite close, within like a tenth of him in qualifying. And yet the man here, there's Lando Norris, but he kind of looks right there. If I just hit the transfer button, there he is. I mean, what? Lando Norris, he sustained facial injury ahead of the Grand Prix Miami Grand Prix after an Amsterdam party. The image surfaced on social media Saturday evening, showing Norris nursing a cut to his face while partying on a boat, where the McLaren driver was believed to have been releving in I think King's Day celebrations. And it's thought that he cut his nose and broken glass. His participation at the Miami Grand Prix, it's unlikely that he's not going to be there, so he will be absolutely fine for the Miami Grand Prix. But what on earth is going on, Lando? I mean, not particularly a good look at all. But there we go. I digress. So Lando Norris, McLaren said they're going to be absolutely not very good in China. They weren't expecting much in China at all. So what are they going to be expecting in Miami? We know in terms of some of the slow corners, which Miami does have, we've seen that, McLaren are going to struggle. Now, the big question mark here is, if they don't struggle in Miami, surely I think, when we've looked at all the different circuits there, the rest of the season looks really good. Yeah, it's going to, isn't it? It absolutely has to. But anyway, I think good things for Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz, okay, he looked okay in China, but I think Leclerc looked better, I felt. And I think at points Leclerc looked better in Japan after his qualifying, bearing in mind how good he was whispering those tyres. And in China, those two were absolutely going gangbusters. So it's going to be really, really difficult, I think, for Fred Vasseur to keep control of his two Ferrari drivers. One, simply because you've got you've got Charles Leclerc staying for next year. He wants to prove that I was the right choice. Carlos Sainz doing the opposite, saying, you got rid of me, and I'm currently out of a job. I need to prove that I'm the best, and it's going to be really interesting. And to a certain extent, we kind of have that at Mercedes, even though both of these drivers have got jobs for next year, unlike Carlos Sainz. But the interesting thing to happen at Mercedes is we've got George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Lewis wants to beat George. George wants to beat Lewis, and all these rumours that Verstappen at the Miami Grand Prix weekend or just after is supposedly going to have a meeting with Mercedes on a massive $160 million deal has been spoken about. I don't know how true that is. An ambassador role for Verstappen, that's something that Hamilton supposedly wanted but did not get. That's kind of like a bit of a middle finger, because I think in terms of ambassador role, Hamilton, walks all over Verstappen in terms of media presence. The whole world knows who Lewis Hamilton is. Most people probably know who Max Verstappen is, but I don't think, when I say the whole world, the whole Western, the whole world that is into Formula One, the whole world that reads newspapers, reads the news, loads of people know who Lewis is. I don't think non-F1 fans, unlike, know who Verstappen is. They might know of him, but they might not know what he looks like, etc. Where Lewis Hamilton, he's one of those characters I felt that has transcended Formula One into the ambassador role. But Verstappen can most certainly get there. But he's very different. He's kind of like Vettel. In a way, unlike Hamilton, he's a really, really private person. But then, so I thought, is that true though? Who knows? So this man here, I think every race, Sergio Perez is going to be under pressure, because every race people are looking to him. Some people are looking for him to fail. Some people, because Mexican, the almost Mexican royalty in terms of motorsport, are looking for him to do a really good job. And I think he had loads of fans here last year. Wouldn't it be great if he won, if he beat Verstappen? Undid last year, because this was really horrible for Perez. Last year he was on pole. We all thought guaranteed win. Verstappen beat him and made him look like an absolute tool. He made him look like absolute like right down in the Vauxhall Conference Division League, where Verstappen was like the Premiership. He looked leagues below Max Verstappen did Sergio Perez. So, but the minimum Red Bull will want from Sergio Perez is to finish second and start on the front row, maybe third, but to finish second. And to be fair, I do think Verstappen and Perez are the two favourites for the race. I think it'll be a 1-2 with Red Bull if nothing funny happens. The only thing in the mix could be the weather and the fact that this is a sprint weekend, where in the past some teams have had trouble nailing the setup. For China, Red Bull nailed the setup. So yeah, I think if it wasn't going to be a Red Bull victory or Max Verstappen victory, something had to go a tiny bit wrong. But that could be something as simple as a setup going wrong, or etc. Anyway, let us know what you think for the Miami Grand Prix. I mean, this has been the Miami Grand Prix preview. You can't see my face at the moment. I do apologise. Hello. So if you like what you see, please give us a subscribe. Stay tuned with us. We'll be with you all the way throughout leading up to and throughout the Miami Grand Prix weekend. And we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. I've got to press the outro now, don't I? Indeed I do. Goodbye.